What's up, guys? We are back at Mobility WOD HQ with Dr. Kelly Starrett. We're talking about preventing running injuries, and we're going to dive into plantar fasciitis.
Worst case of plantar fasciitis I ever had was being a grad student and skateboarding like 2 miles. I couldn't afford parking, and I developed the worst plantar fasciitis on my foot.
And now that's probably why you can skate on both legs.
That helps.
That helps.
That's how I solved the problem. Foot. Pre-grad student. So, I mean, this thing, if you Google plantar fasciitis again, you're going to get 10 million hits, right? And I think the problem with this is we're not seeing the plantar fascia for the very complex system it is. It is, I have an itis of the bottom surface, right?
Of my
Remember,
foot.
itis is an acute inflammatory response that lasts for 3 to 13 days, right? Or 8 to 13 days. Is that typically how long plantar fasciitis lasts?
It can last a lot longer.
Yeah, in fact, if you talk to most people, they're like, how long has it been going on? They're like, since Vietnam.
Years before I was married.
That's right.
Before now.
Even Korea. So,
There's those boots they gave.
that is, that's right. And so one of the things we want to do is, again, take this more holistic view. Hey, I'm developing heel pain. What the heck is going on?
And what are those common symptoms that a lot of times people feel, for those of you who don't necessarily have it, but want to avoid it?
Yeah, people are like, how do I know if I have plantar fasciitis? I'm like, well, because you're walking around and an ice pick is going into your heel. And that's what it feels like. And then the plantar fasciitis can be, anywhere from the back of the heel, right in front of the heel bone, and it can exist all the way through. And what we should do first and foremost is say, hey, look, when that happens, what is it about your environment again that has caused or precipitated a change in dynamic?
So rather than just zero in on this one painful area of my foot, I want to look around a little bit and see what else may be going on.
Yeah, these things never happen just in a vacuum. So, I mean, it's not that area. We have an old saying from Ida Rolf, who is a famous Rolfer and soft tissue expert. She said, where the rats get in is not where they chew. So you can think of that insertion of that plantar fascia onto the heel.
That's where the rats are chewing.
That's where the rats are chewing, but it's not the problem.
Or the rats came in somewhere else.
They did.
Just internet disclaimer, you literally don't have rats in your body.
That's not true. Rat foot, and you'll see it. So actually rats don't get it because they run really well.
They run really
well. The problem is, usually what we can think about is plantar fasciitis, once again, is an itis, it's an inflammatory response. But often I see that this is an insertional problem. And what we've done is we've irritated the insertion of that big sheet of connective tissue on the heel. And there's a technical term for that, and that's apophysitis. And it's an irritation specifically of a tendon or ligament on top of the bone. So we've avulsed that a little bit, and now we've created some mechanical problems.
And where do you commonly feel that pain? So where does that insertion?
It's right, it really feels like in the base of the heel. So if we look at the foot, people are like, it's right here and being stabbed, right? And when you have pain that wraps a little bit further up, that oftentimes is not the plantar fascia, but that is an insertional problem of the posterior tibialis as it runs around and inserts in the foot. But anything in the bottom of the foot, that's right. Anything in the bottom of the foot basically falls into this catch-all category. So the first thing we're trying to do is we want you to get out of pain with this thing, right? And what we tend to do is we want to throw ice at it, and we want to throw ibuprofen at it because pain is bad.
Yes.
And what we've done when we do that, when we either drop in either one of those things, is we basically limit your body's ability to heal a localized challenge area.
So this is really important, especially for new runners. And I was literally looking at this when I was surfing some beginner runner programs online. The most common advice and guidance they'll give you to a new runner who doesn't know anything is, hey, if something hurts, rest, ice, and then try to return in a couple days. And you're saying that may not necessarily be the best approach.
No, in fact, what we know about soft tissue injuries in the body is that they don't handle rest well, because the way that I'm going to remodel the tissue and the way I'm going to evacuate congestion, bring garbage out and groceries in is actually movement. And for us around a painful area that I load over 10,000 times a day just walking, movement can be a problem. So we're going to talk about a strategy to support it in a second. But we're needing a little bit of motion, and it's got to be pain-free motion. The other thing we don't want you to do is I don't want you to limp around for the next 6 weeks, because you're going to change the gait, you're going to be loading other hips, you're going to challenge tissues.
We're favoring something else, and
what a problem. So that's right. So ice stops, basically suppresses prostaglandin release and recongest tissues. What we found in the research, and there's, by the way, no research to support icing in an injury, definitely blocks pain, but because you break the neuromuscular connection, which isn't good. But one of the things that happens is it basically makes the lymphatic system more porous. So as you ice that system down, the lymphatics, which pump out the congestion, actually become porous, and we recongest an area.
So it just becomes more swollen.
And,
more
and we know things don't heal in a swollen area.
And then I think it hurts more, so I need to ice it more. So I just keep doing that.
That's right.
So I'm in that kind of ugly cycle.
And until you finally give up, because you're like, and then 6 months later, you're like, oh, it doesn't hurt now. Or I don't know what happened, but you know, I've given enough time for my body to restart it. So limiting NSAIDs like ibuprofen, do not take that around a soft tissue injury unless you want to prolong that because you don't want to run. When you ask me to run, I'm like, sorry, Nate, I'm taking my broken.
It's the grenade.
That's
jumped on the grenade.
But what we want to do initially is say, hey, look, we want to unload that structure.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to unload that structure is to take tension out of the system. So let's talk about that for a second. All right. So one of the things that we want people to do is that when we put your foot into what we call subtalar neutral, which is the ankle you would have if you were standing. Your knee and ankle are just stacked over your foot. Most of us, when we stand with the foot turned out, right, and the arch collapsed. So, and the reason we do that oftentimes is we're missing basic range of motion in the ankle. So come around here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if I bring his ankle down into this neutral position, you'll notice that he starts to wind up and get a little bit tight into this, you know, he's at 0 degrees, the ankle is flat here, but then I start to run into some range of motion issues, right? And what ends up happening now is that oftentimes when we squat or move, we'll turn the foot out because look what happens to my ankle range of motion. I just solved the problem. Like, this is great. I've got dorsiflexion when I'm running hills or going faster. I require more dorsiflexion as I'm translating over the foot. And the problem with this foot being turned out like this is now all of the forces of production of the musculature aren't running in straight lines, but they're running in oblique force angles. What that means is instead of your Achilles coming straight down, suddenly your Achilles is now pulling off axis. It's pulling obliquely or it has another lateral load. So we start working up.
I'm starting to see some funkiness further up.
That's right. But also look what happens. Instead of my toe being able to land and absorb force, and you can see that Nate actually has a little bit of a stiff first toe. Without even loading up his foot, I should be able to bend this toe a lot more.
I didn't pre-toe stretch today.
I was going to
do my pre-toe stretches later.
And here's the idea. What we're seeing is that a lot of our athletes are living on the margins of their range of motion. And unless you're looking for it, and remember, it's not a value statement, right? Because I don't know if you wore combat boots. I don't know if you what your running volume or your injury history is. It's just, hey, I have incomplete. I have capacity I can gain. And a lot of times, our feet don't really talk to us much. My knees hurt, my hips hurt, my back hurts. I'm sore. My feet are rarely the limiting factor until they become, they start barking. So what ends up happening is if I turn the foot out and I'm striking funny, I'm not coming straight down and loading, or I'm loading through the heel and I'm missing that range of motion, what ends up happening is then as the foot turns out, I start adding a big twist. And now I've got this torsion going on in the plantar fascia. So instead of the plantar fascia creating a stable foot, which it does, it basically, the foot comes down, it's mechanically very supple, so it can absorb to the absorb the ground, and then as I translate over, my toe winds up, and boom, this thing becomes rock solid. And what we see then in this rock solid position is that the foot has mechanically become a brace off of which I can roll forward and generate propulsion, right? Through either pulling or pushing, whatever language you come from. So the idea here though is that if suddenly I'm generating a lot of force, and remember I'm landing at 2 or 3 times body weight, and there are about 400 plus steps in every 400 meters that I run, that's 200 loads per 400 meters, 2 or 3 times body weight per foot. And if I'm twisted, then all of a sudden I'm not pulling straight on with the plantar fascia, I'm pulling obliquely or off axis, which is enough to create almost like a micro tear in this insertion or in the soft tissue itself.
Yeah, so that's a lot of load and a lot of volume, and people they have that race. So you're getting ready for that half marathon, and I just love my pose right here. It's
that's
like,
right,
hey,
so good. Right, so one of the other things we want people to understand is that this sheet of connective tissue, the fascia, that actually your hamstring starts all the way up here, your back. This is where your foot starts.
You guys are getting it all today.
It's a contiguous piece of connective tissue that runs down and over the heel of the foot. And what you will see, honestly, is if we have people stand on the crossbar right here and buy themselves some slack, they just stand here for a minute or so, and they bend over and touch their toes, because we've made changes in the entire connective tissue system, they'll actually have a greater range of motion. And they're like, well, how does this affect this? Well, it turns out this is directly connected to this whole chain.
Connected.
So imagine now if I'm missing ankle range of motion, then one of the things that's likely to happen as I tack this down is I'm going to ask more range of motion around the corner, and now I've got an even more tensioned system that's more susceptible to off-axis loading.
So if my calves are characteristically tight, because if
And
you're
my
that
ankle?
runner who's running 3 or 4 times and the ankle gets really stiff, all of a sudden it just it compounds this problem.
That's right, and oftentimes we see that the plantar fascia is really just the barking dog in the chain, you know, that the whole chain is stiff, but this is the place where, you know, it's less robust. I mean, look at how thick the Achilles is, and then look at the sort of this insertion of this plantar fascia on top of the heel cord here. So even freeing up the skin, making sure, and we've done plenty of this on Mobility Wide, where we just make sure that the skin is moving. You can see how I can easily dissociate the skin over the tendon. If this skin is tacked down, it often acts like an exoskeleton, adding additional load here. So what we typically see is the plantar fascia, 1, is being loaded in an overtension system, or 2 is loaded off axis. And so what we're thinking about in terms of soft tissue work or mobilization is how do we feed slack to this area by either mobilizing the bottom of the foot by rolling on a ball, mobilizing that big toe so it's not, has better range of motion and I'm not transferring more energy through here. How can I free up the soft tissue of the Achilles and around here and then buy some space? The other big missing component is always that people aren't seeing that this hip comes into extension the same time the ankle is flexing. So my ability to open up the ankle oftentimes is limited by my heel. And let me show you a quick, if you'll pop up, let me show you a quick self-screening diagnostic tool. So if I go into tandem with my feet, and what you're going to do with your back leg is you should be able to bring that knee with the heel on the ground easily to the front of the malleolus, so to your ankle bone. So you can see the difference between Nate and I. As I bring that knee forward, I can get my knee way in front of that ankle bone, and you are a little bit restricted there, right?
I'm a little stiff.
And it's not a value statement, it just says, hey, I'm more susceptible to mechanical efficiency because
he's not a better person than me,
I'm
as
not,
much as he wants to
and
say.
definitely not a faster runner. I can run like a cake buffalo, but the idea is now we've just taken a couple clicks on his handbrake, and now we have a system that's running inefficient. So your task, your daily task can be like, how am I doing? Well, I've been working hard and traveling, and versus here.
Yeah.
So we're thinking soft tissue interventions of the foot, soft tissue interventions of the Achilles.
And this is interesting that you bring these types of things up, because I am someone right now who's not necessarily experiencing plantar fasciitis, but I am managing, It may never, but I am managing a little calf funkiness, and I'm also in between 2 marathons. I'm building up another marathon. So
that's exactly
kind of natural. Even though if I'm not feeling any symptoms, you're watching this, you don't have any pain, you may have some restrictions going on in your surface.
Once again, you know, if you spend all your days squatting on the ground, probably not a problem. So we want to start with the assumption, remember that we are designed to run our whole lives and run long. We are designed to walk and run for many miles a day. 10 to 20K a day should be easy in terms of a total walking load. What we're seeing is that we don't take our ankles through full range of motion. We don't squat on the ground, we don't toilet on the ground, we don't work on the ground. And so I'm not taking these tissues normal to their end range of excursion. I just stay in this little window, then I go run and I get cooked.
And I get really cooked there.
So one of the things then around the plantar fascia, we've got to let that tissue heal. So one of the things that can make a big difference is adding a little heel lift in. Right? And what will make a difference is that if you can add a little heel lift in temporarily or go to a higher heeled shoe, then I've bought myself some, I've taken that tissue off tension, I can walk around, I can move.
So this is a very important tip here, and depending on where we go with this, you could almost go too far, because by and large, from a mechanical standpoint, where would you like people to be from a heel drop? Maybe something a little lower, but what it sounds like in the temporary short term, you'd want to elevate that heel.
That's right. And a lot of times,
but not forever.
That's right. And a lot of times we'll see that people will develop a heel problem or a foot problem, right? These are basically the same problem. Achilles tendinopathy, plantar fasciitis, very similar. And it's because they've gone from a high heel shoe to a very flat shoe.
Drops too low. So for you guys who are trying to get into that more minimal shoe and making a big jump too quickly, you can start to see these symptoms.
Totally. And our recommendation is we want you to be flat as often as you can. In fact, barefoot. You'll notice that both Nate and I are barefoot walking around because we can be. And if I can't, then I'm going to wear flat shoes. And if I run, that's right, I know.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I have lots. I have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
So the idea here is that if I
Just
run,
checking.
if I gave myself 2 or 3 millimeters of differential, that's probably not going to be a problem in my running. You know, and what we want people to do is taper down slowly if they're going. Because what I want to do is have full range of motion in my ankles. When you come out of your mother, you are heel flat on the ground. You do not systematically shorten the heel cords. And the problem is, if I'm wearing high heel shoes all the time, which is, you know, some of these Nike shoes have over a centimeter of differential, 12 to 14 millimeters.
Yeah.
It means you're literally running downhill the whole time. Your Achilles becomes shortened, and all of a sudden when you load it, you don't have the room. Tissues can't handle it. So, but the idea is temporarily, let's lift the heel up, let's give ourselves some breathing room, let's get out of pain. And I might even be able to run a little bit, but I've got to keep an eye on coming back down towards flat. So instead of saying, hey, let's be flat all the time and run, what I'm advocating for is, hey, you should be able to run flat, but let's go ahead and 2 or 3 or even 4 millimeter differential in your running shoe. It's not a big deal, especially if you're flat 24/7.
Yeah. It also sounds like you're a proponent of just being very aware of the shoes that you have on your feet and what their purpose is. And it's not just, I know for so many runners out there, you know, they go to the running store, they're told that they need this level stability shoe, and then they buy 10 pairs of it, and then that's all they wear, and then all of a sudden they're wearing it around even when they're not running.
That's right.
And so
your running shoe is a running shoe. And then those shoes you should wear, you know, and I understand running shoes sometimes look good with jeans, but just want to make sure that those running shoes that look good with jeans are flat.
We want you looking good.
Now,
Barefoot
don't
looks
forget,
good too.
you know, your shins are part of that system. And I can't tell you how often we see stiff shin musculature also contributing. And that we'll often have people, because it's weird how it's right above the foot, you know, and it's a pulley. So if people's front of their shins are stiff, we'll have them mobilize and they'll buy themselves additional range of motion in the ankle. We cannot have stiffness in the system.
I can neither confirm nor deny this, but there may or may not be a meme online somewhere that says shin splints. Do you mean bitch legs? I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I haven't, but because
I'll send it
because I'm a professional. So the idea here, though, is one, we got to address that. We know that that's a local swelling problem, where people will talk about the most significant heel pain is the first step out of bed. I get out of bed and I am lit on and limp around the house until it warms up,
And then it goes away.
Then it goes away.
Itself.
So what we're seeing is those tissues are stiff. You haven't been moving very much in the night. They're a little bit swollen. You know, sleeping in compression socks can make a massive difference in your health of your feet. Compressing with a voodoo band, which is our voodoo floss band, which is an easy way to just wrap the foot and address the localized swelling. Because a lot of times, if I get the swelling out of my feet, I have no pain. It's the swelling that's actually causing the
Guys, we did a little video with Kelly, a little deeper on the voodoo floss band, and we used it to address our quads and our knees, so that's on our channel.
Yes.
Like for our
just regular foot health,
everything,
you know,
foot health.
especially wrap.
You can really use it for everything.
Yeah, and you know, I have a couple of powerlifters even who, like, a couple days a week, they just wrap super tight. They put their feet up, they watch some, you know, the television, and it's an easy way of just really hyper squeezing the foot out. You know, when you have an injured site, don't mash the crap out of that injured site. Movement is what we need there. In fact, work around it, but don't go right to town and try to put an ice pick into an area that's been stabbed by an ice pick.
That's common. So a lot of times when we do feel pain, we're like, oh great, I've watched something and you roll my foot, I'm going to do that all the time. But that can maybe irritate it further if you're not addressing all the other things that are really the root cause in the first place.
That's right. And remember that there's a lot of musculature. There are like 7 layers of soft tissue in your feet. And there's a lot of musculature that attaches to
tiramisu.
Yeah, pretty much is. Tiramisu.
Tiramisu.
And what we're thinking is, how do I feed slack to that entire system? So
More chocolatey ganache goodness.
if my leg is basically like a puppet and all the strings are upstream, anytime I buy slack downstream, I can improve the health of my feet. You need to have really strong feet. One of the ways that we work with all our children on preventing this problem is that we jump rope every day. And one of the things we do is we jump rope barefoot and just try to take that, make those feet strong and flexible.
So it's a great way to challenge and build that
In
strength.
fact, one of the ways that I know that you check the box that you have strong, healthy feet is that you can do 100 turns on one foot. And that's a pretty good indicator that you're not also making the mistake of just running out cold and smoking those tissues, which is exactly what we do. So
That's a nice little test. Looking at your warm-up, within that warm-up we could do some jump roping.
Easy.
A nice little assessment, you know, can I jump 100 times barefoot on one foot?
We want to make sure that during our warm-up, we're taking our feet through their full range of motion. It's not an accident. You'll see a lot of really good runners that start with this little walking drill, and all they're doing is taking that ankle and foot through a full range of motion, so that when you go and use it at speed, the tissues are perfused and warm and have a lot of blood flow and circulation.
That's great. I mean, I know I can be better than that. I know so many runners, you know, you're busy, you're working, you have this program, like, okay, it says I have to run on the track today, and all I'm focused on are the, you know, 8 by 400 meter runs that I have to go and hit.
And rightfully so, because they'll suck.
So you just do that, and then you finish your run, but you know, some of the nuance and all the little things in between that are actually the really big things, they kind of get lost.
That's right, and one of the things that, you know, we, like basic karaoke and all that crossover stuff that we used to do, right?
Karaoke.
Yeah, it's
like
karaoke.
that.
I mean, it's like karate, open hand, right? But the idea is that we're taking the foot through lots of range of motion, so this planar. And I think sometimes, you know, my guidelines when I run, because you know I'm running the Freitas Hill a lot these days, is I'm not allowed to do my first run until I'm covered in sweat. That's when my first one starts. And so there's a lot of moving and skipping and moving and walking just to get the blood into the area. Then I'm ready to go.
Then you go off and go. Well, great. Well, Kelly, thank you so much again for taking us through some of these symptoms and ways to really think about some of these common, perfectly preventable diseases.
You will heal.
You will heal. There will be another day. And guys, once again, if you like this video, go ahead and let us know. Hit that like button. If you have any comments, you want to know what color Kelly paints his big toes with his daughters, we may not respond to that.
It's actually up to my daughters.
It's up to their daughters. The flavor of the week.
I like black.
But hit a comment below, and we always love a little conversation there. Definitely make sure you subscribe to our channel. We got a lot more great videos on injury prevention, running technique, how runners can actually strength train and actually do some of these things that Kelly and I were talking about today. And then finally, if you want to take that one step further, you're looking for a little free training on some injury prevention, on how to take a little pre-injury test just to assess your tissue, a basic trick that actually this guy over here taught me. Go ahead and click this link in the video. If you're on a mobile device, there's going to be a link down in the description. It's going to take you to the same place. All you need to do is enter your name and your email, and then I'll be able to personally send you that training. Once again, Kelly, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Guys, thanks so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.